From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Roberto Canessa and Pablo Bierzi's book, I Had to Survive. I'm also especially pleased to note that we have with us Roberto Canessa's wife, Laurie, and his eldest son, Hilario, Pablo Bierzi's wife, Sandra, friends and former classmates of Roberto who have come all the way from South America to accompany him this afternoon. I would like to thank the organizers, especially Maria Arana, for her outstanding support and the volunteers who make this book festival possible. This book is very special and has touched our hearts. It tells about the ultimate value of life and how Dr. Roberto Canessa fights for survival in the Andes had made him a fighter for his most precious patients, his unborn and newborn infants with congenital and life-threatening heart conditions, and the struggle to save those precious lives and to accompany them through time. It also revealed how the cooperation between doctors around the world and hospitals in the United States and in Uruguay organized to save them, fighting against all odds. I forgot how many times I have bought this book. Since its publication last March, first I bought it for myself, but then also for friends and to members of the press and to teachers who wanted to share this story with their students, which is without doubt one of the most incredible in human history. Later on, with my friends' feedback and a story of sleepless nights and sorrowful crying, I realized that my relationship with my friends grew stronger, and that thanks to this wonderful book, my friends got to know the Uruguayan spirit of always fighting to the end, of never giving up, of solidarity and humanism. That can be seen in our soccer, but also in the dedication of our UN peacekeepers and our commitment in the defense and promotion of human rights and democracy. This book has become my dearest friend and my favorite gift. I hope it could become the gift that you can give to your family members and your friends and share this moving story. I feel it can help to enliven our communities, promoting mutual help and social harmony. Thank you.
So we're going to watch a video. Next month will be 44 years since I think probably what you would consider the defining event in your life. And for those of you who...
No, especially because most people in the audience were not born at that time.
Of course.
None of the ladies, of course. They are all younger.
Is there sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
Power! We need more power! I can't let...
Y en el momento del accidente ya se desprendió parte del avión, con lo cual parte de nuestros compañeros ya desaparecieron y no los volvimos a ver nunca más. Muertos en el accidente hubieron aproximadamente 4 o 5 personas. Muchos heridos bastante graves que ya la primera noche fallecieron. Prácticamente ilesos hubieron 2 o 3 compañeros que fueron los que nos ayudaron con los heridos. El primer día fue un día agotador realmente porque tuvimos que sacar los heridos que estaban trancados entre los asientos y entre los fierros. y acomodarnos como pudiéramos, y era un día que nevaba mucho y hacía mucho frío. Es decir, que el primer día quedamos exhaustos hasta que nos cayó la noche y la noche seguía así entre los lamentos de los heridos. El primer día fue trágico.
No hay fórmulas de sobrevivir. Hay 16 que sobrevivieron, hay muchos que los mató de la luz. Esa duda de si vamos a salir caminando o si vamos a esperar que nos rescaten se terminó, de acá hay que salir. Y cada paso es un paso y vamos a dar los pasos que sea necesario o morir en el intento, pero por lo menos con la ilusión de poder llegar. Cada paso estás un poquito más vivo que antes. Había mucho viento, todos los pantalones mojados se empezaron a congelar con el aire y no teníamos dónde dormir.
¿Cómo te sientes en este momento? En este momento me siento casi feliz porque voy a sacar a los compañeros. Hasta que no los saque no voy a ser feliz completamente. Y por los compañeros que fallecieron estoy contento porque sé que están en el cielo.
Un mensaje en Navidad para los compatriotas de Uruguay.
Bueno, que hay que tener fe en Dios, que es lo que une a la gente. Y fe en las cosas simples de la vida, que es lo que vale realmente. Uno se da cuenta cuando pasan cosas así que lo simple es lo bueno.
Roberto, as a young medical student, knew that the protein in the corpses would help his friends survive. His knowledge helped persuade the others to break the taboo against eating human flesh. He's now a surgeon specializing in children's heart cases.
So, for all of you who were not born then, this was an enormously famous event worldwide. And were some of those scenes from the film, the Hollywood film?
Yeah.
Alive,
And
called
some
Alive.
footage from the time,
Yeah, and the rest was documentary footage.
Yeah.
So after all this time, why did you decide to write this book now, which is more than the incident and the rescue, but nonetheless?
Because I feel that this was like an experiment in human behavior. I think this was a laboratory. Once all the sadness is gone and all the feelings are gone, I believe that some malicious hand decided to, instead of putting guinea pigs, put human beings that don't know the snow, because in Uruguay there's no snow. Put them rugby players that they say they are so machos and so tough. Put them university students that they have the knowledge, and if they believe in God, may God bless their souls, and see what happens. What's the bottom line of this is what happens. Who survives, who fails. It doesn't survive the strongest person. Survives the person that have will to live. The joie de vivre. The people that enjoy life and have attitude every day to survive. And there are 16 survivors, so there are 16 formulas. We are a little different. We have some things in common, but we have different things. And I think that this is a legacy for human behavior, because until our plane crashes, we don't realize what is important in life. We don't realize what we really care. We don't realize that we should be so thankful in the things we get in life. And yeah.
But your story has been told many times. Why did you decide to tell it now?
Because when speaking with Pablo Bierzi, and Pablo has the studies of psychology, he was telling me, Roberto, aren't you seeing that still you're going through the line of life and death? That you're still going with patients that are newborns, that they want to survive, and that you are devoted to life into death? Oh, come on, Pablo, this is my life. No. There's something hidden there. You are looking at the window of the fuselage to life, and you're looking at the screen of the echo machine, and you're trying to make survive kids that never survived in Uruguay. I said, there's something going in there. I think, Pablo, you should interview the mothers of the patients, but I shouldn't be there. So he says, this is an incredible information that should be written, should be testimony.
You remind me that the structure of the book is interesting because it begins in detail with the crash and the fact that you and your companions were there for 70 days in a high valley in the Andes, and then you and one other walked out and eventually got the rest of the survivors rescued. So you go through that, but then you go back and forth with the reactions, what your father was going through at the time that you were gone, your wife to be, and then you eventually go to some of your patients, and some of the officers who helped who were trying to rescue you at the time. Why did you decide to structure the book that way instead of just going, straight autobiography, this is my life?
Because as the other day I was speaking with my son and he said, Daddy, your Catholic education is the chapel, is the cross. You go straight in the line of time and there's the altar. But the other religions with the churches are round. And I think that life goes round. And I think that I was in the Andes survivors, I was in a plane crash, I was touching down, and then I go back to suffering, to life and death, and to patience. I believe that although times goes by, you go always to your inner feelings and your identification to act in life. I think that you're like a potentiation of how you are.
You have and have had a full, rich life. How much a part of your life, how often do you think of this?
As long as people ask me about it. I feel like Frank Sinatra singing New York, or Mercedes Sosa, Thank You for Life. And I remember about it, but the people in the audience get to cry. So I think this is something I can transmit to people and makes them good for their hearts.
Well, I'll remind you, you wrote the book, so so you clearly, so they're going to keep asking you about it, like we're talking now.
Yes. Yes.
Do you still think of the incident? You have a wonderful family and a wonderful practice, and you have as I said, a full life otherwise. How much did this define what came after?
Well, I learned that your plane might crash, and in life, I have many crashes. Every time a patient of mine dies, I feel the same thing as my friends were dying in the mountain, And as many times as they survive, and my patients come and hug me, I feel I'm hugging the survivors when we reach the shepherd, because we did it on ourselves. And this selfness of teamwork is a delicious sensation you might have. We human beings must get together into medical teamworks, into family teamworks, and then the joy would be bigger because we all share the feeling of trying to get things better out of our lives.
It sounds like this has formed pretty much, and why wouldn't it, form your view of life?
Yeah, of course. One day I was dying, and there was a shepherd that he wouldn't let his cattle even in his birthday because the pumas might eat their calf. And he just left everything to have a person that he never saw in your life. And we live in this civilized society that if someone drops dead nearby you pushed aside in case that he might touch you. So there are lots of things that we must rethink as a society.
The shepherd being the person who came to your rescue, the first person you saw.
The person we got in touch after 72 days of not seeing any human beings.
You sort of touched on it in there that the most sort of famous part of this whole thing was the necessity to eat parts of those who had died. It was a necessity.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think there are another fascinating aspect is that we had to create a different society in the mountains. A society where you have to make your own clothes, your own warmth, your own water, and your own food. And I love the simplistic approach of people that were not there to say, oh guys, you were the ones that you were safe because you ate the dead people. And after eating our dead friends, which was a terrible problem and a terrible step ahead and something, we only bought time. And let me tell you, it became part of our everyday society. And no one would, at the beginning, yes, it was like your first actual sexual relation, that you think that the world's going to stop, and then life goes on, and sense of humor was very, very important ingredient in this experiment. And I remember very vividly a friend that said, if I die and you don't eat me, I'll come back and step on your head and say, no one is going to eat you because we don't want to get poisoned. Imagine eating you, guy. So, and this is something I learned in the mountains, to treat huge things with a very simple attitude, because sometimes too much pressure makes you ineffective. But really, in this story, my son, when he was 4 years old, another buddy came around and said, yeah, because your daddy had his friends. Yeah, didn't you know about it? Yeah, the muscles of my father were getting weak, and the muscles of the ones that dead, they didn't need them, and they were strong, so he had the muscles in order that he could get, that's it. And I believe we make our life too much complex.
Can you, so right, this was a very simple, difficult, but simple decision to make because you had to. Since then, I'm curious as to whether it has taken on a deeper meaning for you. As a, I don't know, as a almost a sacrament, I guess, or a.
The deeper feeling is that I wanted to ring the bell of the families of the boys that were left in the mountain and tell them the truth. I want to tell face to face what had happened. They had the right not to judge me because they consider us dead. So what right would have if they consider you were dead? But I had to go to their families.
By which you mean?
And the toughest thing was these Nicola boys, 4 boys, they were left in school, their parents had died. And this kid taught me, Roberto, if I would have been there, I would have walked with you.
When you say they thought you were dead, it was so long that you were gone that they had that nobody thought you were still alive.
Well,
right?
at 10 days we had a little radio. The search had been called off, so society had declared us dead. And then I had a very brave friend that he said, "Roberto, I have good news. The decision and the dilemma of waiting to be rescued or going for rescue is over. If we don't get out by ourselves, we will be dead." And from that on, I learned that in life you shouldn't wait for the helicopters. We had to go walking to tell them the helicopters where our friends were.
Very few people who are in a plane crash survive, much less survive the length of time after. And yet you have been back to the site 6 times. I mean, some people would have, never wanted to see it again, and you've taken your children back.
Yeah.
Why?
It took me some time. And I say, well, I'm here. And then I saw the people in the concentration camps that they would go back to the place we were. And I had to overcome the suffering. And then when I was there with my sons, I felt the people that had died were laughing at me and saying, "Hey, Roberto, what a belly you have grown. You look like an old man. You don't have no shame." And I would tell them, "Yes, but I have my sons here that I want them to meet you." And then my daughter said, "Daddy, this is a very sad place, but has such a tremendous energy." And it's true. It's a place that had a very strong energy. Miracles happen there. I have seen New York lawyers crying. You think a lawyer can cry? They were crying there.
Why would you take a New York lawyer there?
He was there. He went by himself. He went by himself.
Okay. you were a medical student at the time.
Yeah.
And you became a pediatric cardiologist. Why did you decide on that route?
Well, my father was a professor in cardiology, and I was doing cardiac catheterization, and there was another physician doing newborn heart diseases, and I was very attracted by this because newborns are wrongly assembled from life. And elder people have rotten coronary arteries because they smoke, they are fat, all the things I do. And these newborns, you could change some part of the heart and they were set off. So I thought there was a great challenge. At that time, three-dimensional echocardiography came out and I could see their hearts and I could see the hearts in the wombs of the mother, and this kind of fascinated me.
What, is there a connection for you in what you chose to do and what happened to you?
I thought there wasn't, but apparently the life and death line is something I want to challenge.
Interesting. Do you believe in I'm asking you a deep question. Do you believe in fate, or do you believe in chance, or something in between? I mean, why did some people survive? Why not others? Why are some of your patients surviving and not others? What is your outlook?
I don't think in life what matters are chances. What matters are choices. It's what to choose, not what happens to you. And I believe that some parents made an incredible effort to go and get their surgery done abroad in the States and their kids are alive. And someone didn't have the money or didn't have the strength to do that, and their kids died in Uruguay. So we have a heart foundation there in Uruguay, which we are helping in trying to raise the level. Probably in school, we learned very soon when the Christian brothers told us that in rugby, the referee is always right. And I said, that's unfair. And he told me, who told you life is fair? We must take life as it comes. And we must take these realities and handle them that way. Yeah, probably you're right, it's fate.
Do you think? I mean, from hearing your answer, I get the sense that what you're saying is there are circumstances, and then there are what we do with circumstances.
Yeah, there's a certain leverage that you can do, and while there's life, there's hope. And this is something that at the Society of the Snow we use. Where there's life is hope, and maybe tomorrow. Those things don't make sense in this everyday life that we are so powerful and we have the car and see this air conditioner is very bad. And I believe that all this materialism makes us spiritually very poor. This is separate us from spiritual life, all this material burden in which we are immersed and we cannot see the real lights.
And you call the group the Society of the Snow?
Oh, the Brothers of the Andes.
The Brothers of the Andes.
But we got very contaminated, you know. We came out seeing what is going to tell our society, what is going to tell the Pope, and then, no, guys, you're heroes. No, we're just dirty people, and no 2 months not washing each other, eating each other. No, you're heroes, you're heroes. Yeah, do you think so? We are heroes. Oh, yeah, maybe we are the heroes of the Andes. But that's better hero than you are hero. No, we are all heroes. So it was completely contaminated, the story, but the version of society. So I think we just should keep pure when a man is fate to death and to fate, and not real. The tools of the Andes are the things I want to transmit. What do you resource, and what you should learn that in the force of life is not how you do things, but why. The real force is why. When you have a reason for doing something, then you will find how to do it.
Speaking of how the world looks at this, so what do you think of it was originally made most famous by the book Alive and then the movie that was made from it. What do you think of it?
At the beginning, we were complaining because the book didn't transmit what we were. And then we had to learn that a book never transmits what happened. And then what is the reality? What you thought you were there, what your friend thought was happening there. And then I realized this is like the story of the Titanic, that there are many windows to look at it. There's a window version, there's an author version, there are many ways of looking to this human experiment behavior that was our tragedy.
Did anything please you about the book and movie, or anything that made you anything in particular, or anything that made you particularly angry?
No, I think that everything adds to the story and gives you a sight of what happened. I would say the Disney film is like a documentary of the feelings we had on the mountain. I would say that Piers Paul Rick, the book Alive, is a documentary of what happened, of the narration of what happened there. And besides that, every new book has the chances of getting all the results of previous books, you know? It's like an upgrade.
What you also have a reunion every year.
Yeah, we have a gathering there. At the first one with the girlfriends, we were like 32, and last year we were 280 with all the grandsons and everything. So the Society of the Andes procreated very happily.
I was going to ask you how things have changed, right? You sort of have told me over the years. Have things mellowed, like in anything, your attitudes toward what happened, or is it still fresh in your mind?
Oh, I know that you're playing my crush any moment, and that we should be more thankful, and that we receive from life lots more than what we need, and we do lots less than what we can, and we don't know what is really horrible. I mean, for me, jail is lots better than the Andes. When you're in jail, you have water, you have food, and the other day I was telling the people in jail that they weren't that bad, and that's something I learned in the mountain. I mean, we were struggling there, having horrible time. We couldn't think that we could be worse, and then an avalanche came in, and 8 more died. Then I learned that until you're dead, you can always get worse, but you can always get better.
And then you went into politics.
Yeah.
¿Por qué?
Well, because I said if we said there are no politicians, they are not appropriate, and say, well, I put my being known person at the service of politics and see if we can get a place in the Senate and everything. So, and the people were complaining, but when I asked them to join me, say, well, you know, this is horrible. I'm a good friend of this congressman, and I cannot face it. So I think that the people's speech is really perverted. They say something, but they act in some way else.
You're talking about politicians?
I'm talking about politicians are the reflection of the people, of the voters, and we are the worst, the voters, and we blame them, and then change the vote, and we are just sitting seeing the match. Hey, why didn't you tackle him? Why didn't you kick the ball? But it's different when you're in the field. And in that sense, and in politics, I learn a lot.
You learned a lot, but you didn't stay on. You decided to stick more with your.
Well, I had one of my greatest chances in my life, because my wife said, if you continue politics, I will divorce. So I had to choose there, and there you have to put lots of money in the campaign, and people are asking you for money to open a new club there. And it's a different world than freeing from outside.
You know, I know we want to leave a good 10 minutes for questions. Are we getting close, or we still got some time? Oh, okay. So it's just a few more. All right. One of the things that. So my experience reading the book was. I got really engrossed in the crash and the survival and everything, and then you sort of like I said, you broadened it out and wove everybody else together, and then by the time you sort of end up, you are trying to, you say that there are common threads and common moments in your life. Would you share some of those?
Yes, I think that there's like a titanium and steel link with the patients, you know, in a family you never saw in your life, and comes to you with the purest thing that is a disease of their kids. And then you're on the boat trying to give them hope and to realize what's going on. And that's a link of knowing that some things are apparently impossible, they are not, and that you can achieve results. And then you're struggling there with these kids, and they begin to succeed and to grow, and to tell you that the mother should put their faces in the book, because the mother, to protect the kids, they would say, I don't want your face in your book. And then the kids, which is 12 years old, tells the mother, how couldn't I be in Roberto's book, Mommy? He saved my life. And then I get to learn a lot about these kids and say, you know, mommy doesn't let me read the book, but I steal from her. And why do you like the book? This is a group from grown-ups. No, Roberto, this book teaches me to be brave. And then I find that I was right in a 12-year-old that got 6 surgeries there in Boston, 6 children, the best one in the world. The doctor was saying we must cross our fingers, and the mother was calling me, we didn't come here to cross the fingers, we come here to get the child cured. Well, I mean, there are limits, medicine is not magic. And then she comes around and hugs me, and it's delicious. It's great. I knew I was doing the right thing.
You did you interviewed the patients?
No, not at all. Pablo didn't allow me. He said this is going to be very, very sweet and very sticky. We don't want something like that. With something that is objective.
So you interviewed the patients. Okay. And what about your wife and your kids and your father?
Well,
who interviewed them for the book?
Pablo. So and it's great because you know your sons are your principal detractors. You know, they are the first ones in telling you what you're not doing correctly. They will copy from you all the defects. They won't copy that you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning until they need to do it because they have sons. So and I think it was good. In that time, my parents died, so we had the chance of processing that part. And so this human experiment went into the Andes guinea pig, then in life, then how children look at him, then how your parents die. And I'm very proud of what Pablo and I perform in this book.
So you think Pablo got more of the truth out of your...
His truth.
His truth.
There are many truths.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a difference between the truth and the fact.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything funny that because the moments of humor in this situation seem to be few and far between.
Well, there were codes in the Andes on the Society of the Snow that if you have something sad to say, you wouldn't say it, and you would hook into the dreams of other persons. When we will go back, we'll make a restaurant, where we will go back with many things. Another thing is that irritation and fighting each other is a price cost when you're performing great things. Successful teams always have friction. You must know that. Put sense of humor, consider friction as an operative cost in life. These are the great lessons from the mountain. Don't look at the mountain, look at your next step. If you look at the mountain, you will be intimidated. I mean, there are lots of things, and my favorite one is when I look to myself to the mirror and I said the same jerk as always. Don't ever buy that you're a millimeter better than anyone.
So it's time for questions, but I have one last quick one. What food were you thinking of most?
Sweet food. Dulce de leche is something we take in Uruguay, and the discussion was it was dulce de leche ice cream or dulce de leche by the spoon, because the ice cream was better because you could feel the ice cream falling in the side of your mouth as you had too much. This was a dream, and I used to dream that I was in a pastry sweetness there, and that I couldn't go in because there was a glass. I mean, it was horrible. There you go. Now it's
on now. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. Of the survivors of the crash, in the end, 16 made it off, and one of the older ones, much older, was Javier Methol.
Yeah.
And I was checking for research. I was trying to determine, is he still with us, and are the other 14 also all still with us, and how many make their reunions?
Javier died last year
of
cancer, and there are still 15 alive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As we hear you talk about that this wasn't an experience that should be seen as heroism, and you extract these meanings out, I wonder, though, if the alternative were for you to have led a very safe and sanitized life in a gated community or not experienced any adversity or challenge, would that have made you a different person? Are there gifts that came out of the adversity, the shared experience that you had?
Yes, this tells you that you planned my crash. I think there were some lessons. The price was too high to pay to live in a graveyard for 2 months was terrible, but I learned just not to get into crisis and not to get so stressed when really the circumstances are not worthy for it. Yeah, and to care for the simple things of life that are most important ones, and we forget. I was missing my house, the smells of my house. Those are the most precious, and we realize them until we lose them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for the candid explanation and the strength shown back there. I have a question. When you were actually initiating the trip across the Andes with the 3 people, I think you mentioned that you get to the top of the mountain and you saw on one side, to the east side, the Argentina side, that you saw like a line that looked like a road, and but still you decided to actually go across. What made you guys decide to actually go through the other way rather than the shorter way to the east?
Because to the Argentinian side was uncertain. This was the Minas de Sominar, and when we were in the fuselage, there was a mountain. But as we climbed higher, you could see the 2 roads there. And Nando said, Roberto, we are not going to go back. This is very tough. And on the other hand, it was more certain that in 60 kilometers, there was a railroad. And we know this, that the sun sets to the west, and to the west is Chile. And that means 100,000 steps. And this is more certain than the other thing, which was more vague, and maybe there are desertic parts in Mendoza, and maybe we could get into these desert parts and maybe not have water. There was the idea of taking something very sure, and instead of something that would look easier.
Thanks.
I have a question about the pilot, sir. Having 40 years, past 40 years from the accident, is it different, your opinion, that happened that now, what is now with them wasn't because it was a human mistake? I mean, what is your vision nowadays?
Well, the vision is that after we had the plane crash, we went to the pilot to ask him, where were we? And he said, we passed Curicó. And if you look to Chile, there was a huge mountain on the side, so he was wrong. So I learned that sometimes very specialized people make mistakes, so that you shouldn't follow them, especially when they made a mistake before. This is what I learned. Experts sometimes cannot be so truthful. And then I met some of his family and old people there, and this was a terrible mistake, and there is a succession of mistakes that land to an accident. It's not only one thing, it's many things.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I wanted to share something. I moved to this country from Chile when I was 7 years old. And I remember the front page of the Washington Post with the accident. I was young, but my uncle was one of the doctors. He was doing his residency in San Fernando, and I brought a picture of Eduardo Arriagada, who went up and took your vitals. And he's always, he goes to your reunions. You know, I haven't seen him in 3 years, but whenever I travel to Chile and I see the Andes, I think of you. I wonder how you did that, and it keeps me from trying to complain too much about things. But I also brought you some calugas from Chile.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Arraigada, sí. Baquedano, Melech, todos los médicos Ausín de acá, me acuerdo muy bien de ellos. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, one of my favorite parts of the book was when you spoke of, or you wrote about your father in the taxi, and when he found out you were alive. And I'm just wondering, since the publication of the book, has the identity of the taxi driver ever come to fruition? Have you ever been able to figure out who that taxi driver was?
Yeah, it's a mystery, and we never saw him before. Maybe we should try and get him, or maybe he's not around anymore. I mean, it's 44 years. But it's incredible, the story of the taxi that...
Do you want to explain?
Yeah. When they went on the search, they went on a C-47, which is a Second World War plane, and the plane, one of the engines was always stopping and nearly crashing. So my father was coming back to Uruguay, and they landed in Mendoza, and he took a bus to go back to Buenos Aires. and the bus broke in the entrance of Buenos Aires, and my father said, how a man can be so unlucky. I don't find my son, it's going to be Christmas, he's going to be missing. My mother was telling him, he's alive, you should look for him, you should look for our son, I feel him alive. And I was telling Mommy that you believe in that trash of telepathy, I'm alive, look for me. And my father was coming with his hands and tired, and on the morning in Buenos Aires, he goes into a taxi, and the taxi driver says, have you heard that they are survivors from the plane crash? What do you mean? No, we are on the search. No, they are 2 survivors from the plane crash. But my son is there. Did you ever heard the names? What's the name of your son? Canessa. He's one of them. Look at all the radios are there. And he puts on the radio and he hears that as a survivor, he begins hugging and kissing the taxi driver. And then he didn't want to charge him the trip, and he went to my cousin's house and nearly put down the door, but it was the wrong apartment, so he was pushing the door for another person. Are you crazy? Yes, I'm crazy, Mom. I'm really crazy. My son is alive.
And then he realized and tried to go back and find the taxi driver and
he would like to see that man again. Absolutely.
That's the genesis of the story. We have 2 minutes left. Any other questions? People in extreme situations, and you actually have chosen to put yourself in extreme situations for other people by being a surgeon. Very often they find meaning to go on. That's usually the common thread, is those who go on find a meaning. What meaning have you taken from this, and what meaning did you have that helped you go on and that helps you now?
Yes, many people tell me, why you go on that? And then I say, why not? Why not save this child? Why not get him alive and get a real chance in survival? Isn't it life the best thing that can happen to anyone and to a family that have a newborn child? So this is, I think, why we should commit ourselves into really important things and forget about all the stupidity that is around us, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.